The batterers would use the children. They would use them as spies, and we've referred to that in this video series. Hello and welcome to this episode for the Survivor Diaries. The title of this episode is a question: do abusers use their children? And although I do my normal disclaimers, I'm going to do some disclaiming, but they're not quite my normal ones. I do say normally I'm a solicitor in England and Wales. I'm not really going to talk about the law so much in this episode because I'm looking very much at that question: do abusive parents actually use their children to manipulate and to control the other parent? Other disclaimers, the usual general advice. Again, it's not really an advice video. This is my view, my humble opinion, what I see and what I have experienced, and this is from a perspective of a survivor and also as a professional working with lots of people who are trying to co-parent in the abusive situation. And as these videos always say, domestic abuse always continues through the child arrangements. The videos, I'm going to refer throughout to the abusive and to the non-abusive parents. However, I am going to, in drawing on different people's understandings of whether or not children are used in domestic abuse by the abusive parent, I'm going to draw on 3 different, quite experienced professionals, and they will refer in a gender-specific position. One thing that I am going to just add as a disclaimer, quite clearly discussing things that are not working in the family justice system in England and Wales, and the failings of the family justice system to look at evidence properly right at the start of the case, and in effect to follow the practice direction and to make safe decisions about domestic abuse. This is not all people in the family justice system. Like any system, you get professionals who really want to make a difference and who care deeply about the issues and are dedicated about the issues. What I want to do in these videos is to explain something from a survivor perspective as well. So this video, who this video is for, it is for people who are trying to co-parent with a person who is continuing the abuse through the children. It is for any professionals or people on a personal level who actually want to understand more about that and this question: do they actually use the children? So the professionals looking at this, I want you to see it from the survivor perspective. And the reason that I want you to do this is because the videos are going to look, after this one, at the effect of domestic abuse on children. And so therefore, whether or not they're actually using the children is something we're going to have to cover first. And then I want to look at the parental alienation domestic abuse issue. And in that one, I need to have a look, or to ask you to have a look, at whether or not children are used as pawns by abusive parents or not. I have referred to this concept, children being used as pawns, questioning in some earlier episodes about whether or not abusive parents really love their children in the way that non-abusive people would think. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I couldn't get my head around it myself until I've actually experienced what it's like to be in that kind of relationship. And the reason that I want to help people to understand just how deep this issue is and how badly the children will be affected is because I saw it put beautifully on a meme. So I'm going to ask if that can be flashed up, and I'll just carefully read this one through with me. So it starts off saying pathological narcissists. I'm going to just refer to them as abusers. Abusers get away with their abuse because those who haven't experienced it cannot wrap their heads around the possibility such cruelty exists. Because the truth sounds insane. That's because it is. And believe survivors is the message. Trust me, survivors coming out of a relationship are just in a state of shock. The level of abuse that you experience, that we experience when we're in that situation, it sounds incredible. And I only know this now from sort of like being much, much further on, and I still look back to situations and think, what on earth? WTF. So coming back to this point, do abusive parents use their children. So here is where I'm actually going to refer to 3 different male academics. And am I deliberately choosing male academics for this rather than my usual model? Yes. They also happen to be, they do a lot of work in the States, and in one case he's also been extremely instrumental in the laws in England and Wales as well. So first I want to refer to, and I'm going to put the links underneath this video, but I just want to refer to Professor Evan Stark. He is a sociologist, a forensic social worker, a widely published author. He wrote Coercive Control, the Entrapment of Women in Personal Life, which was released in 2007 by Oxford Publications. He's done a lot of work in the United States, and so some of his quotes will refer to the batterer. He's also active in the United Kingdom as well. He's a visiting professor of Essex and Bristol University, and he is a research professor at the University of Edinburgh. He has provided expert evidence, in the Court of Appeal in Sally Challen's case, and he was instrumental in laying the groundwork for the laws on coercive and controlling behaviour, the criminal laws, coming into place, that framework in 2016. So I'm linking his video, which is an interview with him speaking to, I think it's Welsh Women's Aid Wales. Some of the things that he says there. Not only did the coercive control of children appear to replicate the control of the mother, but there was an additional pattern, the weaponisation of children. The batterers would use the children. They would use them as spies, sometimes as co-abusers if they were older children, so encouraging the children to badmouth the other parents, the non-abusive parent, and to treat the non-abusive parents with the same lack of respect and the same controlling behaviours that they do. They would use them as pawns in court proceedings, as ways of extending their abuse, particularly after separation occurred. And he says that there was coercive control of the children that was symmetrical to the coercive control of the adult. He says that when the abuse of the children occurred, it was absolutely, intimately tied to the coercive control of the mother. In other words, the children were being harmed, not independently of the mother, but in direct ways designed to hurt her. And he goes on to explain that the aim of harming the children is to dominate and control the mother. And he says, so the coercive control of the children and the coercive control of the mother are part of a single strategic process, and that process has to be treated as a single strategy. It has to be recognised as such, and it has to be interventions that are able to target both mother and child as a unit. It goes on to say that anything that is the converse of that, interventions that presume a separation of the mother's interests from the child's interests, do a disservice to both the mother and the child, and they do actually, if you think about it, replicate the aim of the batterer. Why am I telling you that? This is where the phrase high conflict, when you're dealing with a domestic abuse situation, is actually, the abusive parent pounces on that. Oh yes, there was high conflict. It was all high conflict. I can see that now. Such a pity the other parent won't let go of it all. And then as soon as the court is not watching again, it starts up again. And that's how it continues. It just continues. So of course we're going to cover through the series about how the abusive personality, Pat Craven's dominator, is the liar. So they will do this head working, persuading that they've seen the error of their ways and that we all need to move on. If only the other parent could stop these silly allegations of domestic abuse and talking about the past. And what Evan Stark is saying is that we are effectively reinforcing what the perpetrator is trying to do when we say and minimise with them that it's high conflict when it isn't. The solution to this, I talk about this all the time through the Survivor Diaries, is about, in my humble opinion, is about early evidence checking, which requires, in most cases, early fact-finding or fact-finding on disputed allegations as soon as possible. I'll come back to that. The second person who has spoken about Abusers and Their Use of Children is Lundy Bancroft. Again, he's predominantly working in the States. He's an author, a workshop leader, a consultant on domestic abuse and child maltreatment. And I'm going to put 2 links to his website below, which one is Assessing the Risk to Children from Batterers, which is an article, and then his resource page. I'm also going to add the link there. On that page, specifically, I'd refer you to The Batterer as a Parent, Addressing the Impact of Domestic Violence on Family Dynamics. In this, it's by Sage Publications, and it explains, and I'm quoting here, how an abusive man can affect the relationship between a mother and her children and between siblings, and how abusers may continue their control through the children post-separation. And he refers, or the book is recommended as such, that abused mothers, including those in the family court system, report finding this book validating and helpful. And I think this is something that I want to stress, because the torment that is caused to non-abusive parents and to their children in the way that the children are used is terrible. And I'm going to come on to this. Yes, it's great, the Domestic Abuse Act Section 3, we're recognising that children are victims of domestic abuse in their own right. However, this is very limited. This is very limited considering the actual amount of harm and damage that they do. Finally, a third view on whether or not children are used. I'm going to refer, again, more of an American side, so we're going to be referring to the idea of the batterer. I'm also going to refer here to the Duluth model, and I'm hoping we can flash up the power and control wheel, which is probably where it's best recognised. Where I'm looking and where I'm also linking under this YouTube video is a link to the Duluth model it's actually a channel on YouTube. And here, what we've got, Scott Miller, who is, I understand the title is Batterer Intervention Specialist. I'm giving full credit here. He works for various domestic abuse intervention programs. So he works with male abusers, perpetrators, to assist them with their behaviour and changing behaviour. And he is instrumental in involving the work being done in Duluth. So a link we're putting underneath here to his video, which is Using Children, Understanding the Power and Control Wheel. So I'm quoting Scott Miller here. 2 of the things that he says that are particularly relevant here. One of the tactics in the power and control wheel is this use of children as a way to leverage her to either start doing things that she's doing or stop doing things that she is. The use of children is linked to her desire to be the children's mother, the love that she has for them. He sees this, and he knows that if there's a way to get her to stop or start doing something, it's to use the most precious thing in her life, which are her kids. He then goes on to say, it really goes to this realisation that although these men love their kids, their desire to control and make their partner pay for something they have done supersedes that love, because they will use those kids as tools to get back at her. And I understand I am putting this in a very gender-specific terminology. I am quoting 3 male people that are clearly very well versed, very well educated. They've worked for a long time in these areas, and I'm hoping that if you are experiencing the difficulty of trying to co-parent with an abuser, that these resources can also help you. Coming back then to the purpose of this video, I was asking the question, do abusers use their children? And the reason I wanted to do that is because it is very, very difficult, as I said, to imagine such a thing if you haven't actually experienced it. Okay, remember, abusers get away with their abuse because those who have not experienced it cannot wrap their heads around the possibility that such cruelty exists, because the truth sounds insane. That's because it is. Okay, I hope that that's been useful. I'm trying to stop a cat from adding here. It is 11:30 on a Sunday evening. and I can, as you can probably tell, I'm going to have to leave that there at any point. Okay, I hope that's been useful. As I said, thank you for watching this episode. We will be moving on to the effects of domestic abuse on the children, and that is something that I find personally quite difficult, because the Domestic Abuse Act, it's not taking it far enough. And then also we need to understand this so that we can look at the parental alienation. So thank you, I hope that's been useful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode, which is on the effects of domestic abuse on the children. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.